So good morning again, and thank you for joining. My name is Sam Code, and I'm the UIS grant writer in the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. Our topic this morning is going to be interest inquiries, and a recording of this morning's session will be posted to our YouTube channel hopefully later today, and I'll also be sending out a copy of the slides and links to all the references I'll be making as well. All right. So let's go ahead and get started by determining what an interest inquiry is. An interest inquiry is an umbrella term for a brief, formal document that can be used to gauge a sponsor's interest in their project ideas. An interest inquiry can also be referred to as an expression of interest, a concept paper, a letter of inquiry, but I tend to avoid that last one because LOI is an acronym that can be used for letters of intent as well. Some sponsors may use both terms, but letters of inquiry and letters of intent, in my experience, are different in that letters of intent are less of an introduction and more of a strong statement of your intent to submit an application to an existing open opportunity. NSF one-pagers can also be considered to be a type of interest inquiry, but they're specific to NSF and come with additional guidelines and content restrictions that foundation-focused inquiries don't. We'll go into a little bit more detail about those shortly. Interest inquiries are useful because they're maybe the biggest reason is that they're geared to gauge whether or not a sponsor and or specific opportunity is suitable for your project. And it goes straight to the source. So if you receive feedback from the sponsor that suggests that you're not a good fit, you can save yourself the time and effort that developing a full proposal would take. Interest inquiries can also be used to make sure that you're pursuing the correct pathway for gaining funding for your project from a sponsor. This is especially relevant when you're considering submitting a proposal to a behemoth of an organization like NSF or NIH. They've got so many programs and directorates that you want to make sure that you're going after the right opportunity for your project. To that end, an interest inquiry or NSF one-pager could lead to a more open dialogue between yourself and your potential funding program directors that could help shape your proposal into something that would be a better fit for a specific solicitation or program. This isn't a given, but it's a possibility. Additionally, some of the grant opportunities are invitation only, especially if you're looking at foundation-based opportunities. If you don't already have an existing relationship with a sponsor, it can be difficult to secure an invitation to apply for funding. So interest inquiries for foundations should be designed to start bridging the gap between yourself and a potential funding source. Interest inquiries for foundations are meant to be an introduction for your organization, your work, or your specific project ideas. They should be around 1 to 2 pages long, and they should still be more formal than a general, hey, hi, I'm interested in applying for funding because I need it type thing. They're not as restrictive as an NSF one-pager. Some foundations will have their own guidelines, but in general, they're not as rigid in formatting requirements. And the primary function of an interest inquiry that is targeted to a non-federal funding source is to hook their interest and draw them into caring about your work enough to invite you to apply for exclusive funding opportunities. Some formatting tips for interest inquiries for foundations. You want to check for the sponsor guidelines first. Some foundations will post their requirements while others will give you no context other than that a letter of inquiry or an interest inquiry is required to be considered for funding. You want to keep it brief, still no longer than 2 pages, and it should be formatted more like a letter in this case, with an address block at the beginning and a sign-off at the end. Headings that divide each section are encouraged, and you want to stick to 1-inch margins as a good rule of thumb, and an Arial font or similar ones that are no smaller than 10 point, because the goal is to make it easy to read and easy to understand, so that way they can focus on the content of your work rather than parsing through the lines of text. Interest inquiries for foundations, some of the common elements are an introduction with your name, role, organization's name, and background information. You want to include some body paragraphs detailing the need, target population, solutions, objectives, activities, and outcomes. Interest inquiries targeted towards foundations should also place more emphasis on the societal benefits and outcomes, because more often than not, foundations are working directly with the public for their benefit. You also want to include a conclusion or a sign-off that details your contact information so they know how to find you later. You've got a little bit more space to work with on an interest inquiry that's being developed for a foundation that has no posted guidelines. So a greater amount of detail is more acceptable than it would be for an NSF one-pager. That being said, an interest inquiry is still meant to be an introduction, not a full proposal. So you don't have to go crazy with the details, just provide enough context to emphasize potential impact. Some best practices are to be specific but concise. As I mentioned on the previous slide, this is meant to be an introduction to your project ideas, not a fully fleshed out proposal. You want to do your research on the funder and make specific references to their priorities if you can, and detail how your project or your proposal could help further their goals. You don't want to use a generic inquiry. You want to tailor each one to each funder or sponsor that you want to approach. They want to know that you know what you're doing and who you're talking to, and an impersonal generic inquiry might not couch their interest. You want to focus on making a compelling argument, and the goal is to make them curious and or excited enough to want to learn more about your project and invite you to submit an application for funding. NSF one-pagers are a little bit different. They're similar in that they're designed to be an initial introduction that opens the door to more in-depth conversations with the project directors or officers. They mostly use them, NSF in particular, mostly uses them to make sure that your project is suited towards the program or the directorate. And other federal sponsors might have specific guidelines or requirements, but in general, an interest inquiry that is being sent to a federal funding agency should be focused on your specific project idea rather than an overview of your program or your organization. NSF guidance for some of the common elements states that one-pagers should essentially be structured like a project summary section of a larger proposal. For reference, I've included a link here to the specific section in the PAPPG that covers the project summary if you want to take a look at it later. I've also developed a simple template for one-pagers that I'll include with my follow-up email with links to this recording. But just to give you an overview of what it includes, some directorates might provide additional guidance, but the key sections include the contact information, target program, proposal type, relevance to your program, brief, submission, running titles, key terms and phrases, but no more than 6, and a concept outline that includes an overview of your project, the intellectual merit, and the broader impact statements. For a little bit more context on the concept outline section of a one-pager, you want to provide some background information and identify the knowledge gap and your research questions and hypothesis in the overview section. The intellectual merit section should highlight the potential of your research to enhance or enable other research in the field, and it should also cover your theoretical contributions to the field as well. And the broader impact section should highlight any desired societal outcomes that you're pursuing or potential applications of your research and reasons that the public would care about it. Some best practices for NSF one-pagers that you want to do your research and make sure that you're submitting your one-pager to the correct directorate or program. With organizations like NSF where they have so many directorates and so many programs, you want to really make sure that you're reaching out to the best fit for your project. And they should be specific to the program, but if you're reaching out for help determining which program is the best fit, be sure to make note of that, because the project officers will communicate with each other. They can discuss amongst themselves where your project will fit best. So if you have another one that you kind of identified and you want to check on that one too, make sure you highlight that. If your targeted program solicitation includes specific review criteria outside of the merit review criteria, which would be the intellectual merit and the broader impacts, you want to include sections on that as well. I know you're really limited on space because it is literally a one-pager, but if they specifically pointed out, you want to dedicate at least a sentence or two to that. You want to be specific, but not too specific. You're not soliciting detailed feedback. You're introducing your ideas and making sure that you're not wasting your time and theirs by submitting a proposal to the wrong. Some sponsor context where you can find research or where you can look up your sponsors. We have two main resources on campus that can be used to research sponsors and funding opportunities. And that would be Grant Forward and the Candide Foundation Directory Online. Grant Forward is our go-to for most of our grant seeking needs, and I'm sure you've heard us talk about it quite a bit by now. Most of us use it for opportunity searches, but their extensive filters allow you to sort opportunities by sponsor type as well as opportunity types, meaning that you can use it to hone in on sponsors that actively provide funding for your project area. Grant Forward also has sponsor profile pages that include sponsor profiles and overviews, links to the sponsors' websites, different grant types and keywords, contact information, relationships with other sponsors as well, and active and archive funding opportunities. I've attached a few images on these next couple slides to show how the sponsors' profile pages are set up. They're pretty easy to navigate, and they provide links to the sponsors' own web pages, which can be used to find context for their organization and larger funding strategies. It's pretty intuitive, thank goodness. And I've included a link here that you should be able to click on to go to this funding page. Another great thing about the sponsor pages is that it highlights the sponsors' open and archive funding opportunities, so you can see exactly what they're interested in funding, meaning that you can use those listings to gather context when deciding whether it's worth the effort or not to put together a tailored interest inquiry at all. The other one, especially if you're looking at foundations or non-federal funding sources, is the Candide Foundation Directory. It's a database that stores information on a ton of sponsors, primarily non-governmental organizations like foundations or charitable organizations that engage in philanthropic works. It's available through the Central Illinois Nonprofit Resource Center. And Brookins Library. They pay for the license to have it open to our campus, so you have to access it through the internal Brookins CINRC page. I've linked it here, but you can also just do a quick search for it on our website as well. The Candide Foundation Directory online is great for researching what a particular funder has been up to funding-wise. It's not as opportunity-focused as Grant Forward, but it does have a lot of neat features like more extensive sponsor profiles that include grant-making statistics, funding categories, grant recipients who they've given out money to, and specific grant amounts, so you can decide if their budget is going to be big enough for your funding opportunity or for your project idea. They also include highlights on funding interests, so subjects, geographic focuses, support strategies and types, and they also have information on open funding opportunities, application procedures, programmatic contact information, and they also link to similar sponsors as well. I've included this slide to show an example of some of the statistics that the Foundation Directory provides for some funder searches or some funders that I searched up for in the same funder that I searched up in Grant Forward. So their sponsor profiles can be more extensive in some ways. So I didn't screenshot the whole thing for reference, but I encourage you to check it out if you have a specific sponsor in mind and want to check out their history of giving in your field and the types of projects that you're interested in funding. And some key takeaways from interest inquiries are that it's your sponsor's first impression of you, your organization, and your project ideas. Interest inquiries should be tailored to the program or sponsor that you're interested in engaging with, because if they're not, then it's not going to catch their interest. You should provide enough context for the sponsor to get a feel for you and your project, but it's important to remember that interest inquiries are not full proposals. So you don't want to go into too much detail, just provide enough context so they know what you're about and what you're looking to fund.
I just have a quick comment. I think, the interest inquiry, when you describe, is very important. Yeah, it's a little bit more on formal size, but in reality, we also have lots of informal way. For example, simply, sometimes, for example, we are attending ESA annual meeting and NSF program, like simply they have workshop. So you simply can talk to them, and email contact is very easy. But I think I like to actually talk to them in person, then give people at this program official some kind of impression. So and so sometimes they can give you some tip. Yeah, I think so. A lot of kind of informal exchange, I think, also very important. Try to get this idea, So yeah, especially I think you have some questions they like that, to bring the question to them and ask them. They will be more than happy to help you.
The NSF also has a lot of webinars, I've noticed. Like each directorate has their own webinar series, and a lot of them have office hours that cover similar things. And most of the time, they just stress that having an interest inquiry or having a one pager ready is just a good way to touch base and to start a conversation if you don't have the opportunity to go to those informal meetings. And I think, for NSF specifically, it's just to help decide where your project fits more. And to start the discussion on, specific project feedback. Obviously, they're not going to give you a full review of your proposal, but they can help you kind of shift gears on your research if you need to get better funding. I think it's more important for the foundation side of things, just because I've seen so many foundations that are invitation only. And if you don't have an existing relationship with them, it's harder to get a hold of those people in a face-to-face or informal meeting, especially when they're larger funding sources. I've been looking at the Mellon Foundation for quite a while, just because they are so prolific in their giving trends. But they're one that's invitation only too. So it's essentially to set out the bridge to open a discussion, so they know that you exist essentially too. And they have some, background information.
I really think it's doesn't matter which type project you are working on. I think it's always a good idea to try to contact the program officer, because last year I remember we have faculty here submit some equipment grant to NSF, but later the faculty actually found out the year before they just kind of support offer one equipment grant to Northern Illinois State University. So in that case, likely they are not going to give you the second one, since we are so close. So I think I don't know the faculty actually talk to the program officer, but I think if he has a chance to contact program officer, maybe program officer mention, we already kind of found similar equipment, the same equipment last year. So that actually can save us lots of time.
Exactly. And also too, I think it's a good practice to have something like this put together anyway, because it helps you think about your ideas and your project in a different way. Because it makes you condense it down into something that's easily digestible and easy for other people to understand. So if someone asks you, well, what do you do? What's your project about? What's your research about? Having a more condensed and concise answer is always helpful, I think, especially when you're talking to the general public or putting out a press release or something like that. So it's beneficial on both fronts, I think. Well, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so thank you for attending this morning. And like I said, I'll go ahead and put the recording online later today as well, along with a link to our box file that has the NSF one pager template as well. So, thank you.